This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stockbox interview. Joining us today is James Campbell, the Managing Director of Botswana Diamonds. It's very good to have you back onto Stockbox. James, how are you doing?
I'm very, very good indeed, Mark. And how are you?
Very good. Thank you, James. Now, today we're going to do a bit of a feature. I know you've got a new corporate presentation looking in the year 2023. So it's a good time, I think, to go through the plans of the year, take the status of where the projects are and really what you want to achieve this year and see where Botswana Diamonds are at and maybe take a look at the investment case as well. But just quickly, before we get into that, I believe you've recently been on a trip to London, haven't you? Was that to do with the company and the business?
Very much so, Mark. I actually landed back from London this morning. I left London at -3 last night and arrived in Johannesburg at 35 degrees. And the main purpose of my visit was to attend the company's annual general meeting, which took place in Paddington on Thursday. And then, of course, see my fellow directors and then fellow investors too in the company.
Excellent. So I guess the AGM went all according to plan. All resolutions were successfully passed?
That's exactly what we said on Twitter. All resolutions passed.
Excellent.
Yes, 100%.
Good. So a worthwhile trip meeting your other directors and also investors as well. Did you get any sort of feedback from of the company, what people are thinking?
Yes, we did, Mark. It's always good, especially in the post-COVID era, to go and meet investors face to face, because after all, the investors in a company such as Botswana Diamonds are small retail investors, who have put their own personal money into the company. And it's very good for them to meet you directly and very good for me to meet them directly, because they can then ask the kind of detailed questions which they want to ask, which might be difficult in any other form of communication. And then, of course, you share a coffee or tea or sandwich actually afterwards and talk a bit more about the company and about the region and things like that. So I think these are really important events, both for management, the board, and for investors.
Indeed they are, James. Okay, well, I'm going to hand over to you then to take us through your presentation, and I will ask some questions as and when they come to mind.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. It's a fairly brief presentation, and like we did at the AGM, I'll focus a little more on some slides rather than the other, the obligatory disclaimer. But going into a snapshot about what Botswana Diamonds is all about. Well, obviously, we're a diamond company. And from a diamond market perspective, diamonds have recovered very strongly since COVID. But there has been some question marks in terms of the resurgence of the market in China, which is a particularly important market for the diamond business. What is our mission? Our mission is obviously to become a diamond producer, and we look to acquire ground, refine opportunities, and then joint venture where we believe there is a short to medium term possibility of being a producer. We have two main focuses. The first one is on imminent production, and that's at the Thorny River and Marsfontein projects in South Africa. And then we have transaction potential in the Kalahari of Botswana, where we have several of our own projects. And we're also still very interested in acquiring the Gagu diamond mine from Gem Diamonds. We're very much focused on Southern Africa. As the name says, we're Botswana Diamonds, but we also have significant interest in South Africa. And once we're able to get our own ground in Zimbabwe, we'd love to go back there because it's underexplored. Our management team is steeped in exploration and mining and proven value creators. And then from a finance perspective, we very much focus on joint ventures. And so we can actually minimize dilution to our core shareholders and founding shareholders. And that's a very important aspect for us. Size is not important, but shareholder value is. And then finally, if in order to actually discover new mines and in order to bring older mines into commercial production, we do need to look at different technological approaches and different operating approaches to actually realize that.
Okay, well, that's a very strong start. I particularly like your mission there to deliver capital gains by becoming a diamond producer. So that's nice to see. You actually have ambitions to go all the way with one or two of your projects, maybe.
Absolutely, Mark. If you go with a view of exploring with a view to exiting a project, I think you have the wrong mindset. And the board has strong skills in production as well as exploration. And so this is exactly what we want to do. If we get bought out along the way, well, so be it. But it's not by design.
Okay, excellent. Well, we can have a look at some of those projects then, I guess, can we?
Absolutely. First up, though, in a quick look at the diamond market, because I think that's particularly important. As I mentioned in my introduction, the diamond pricing recovered very strongly post-COVID and has plateaued essentially since the Russia invaded Ukraine. And the big thing which everybody's looking at the moment is the reopening of China. China is a very large market. As all of your listeners would know, it was locked down for a considerable period of time during COVID, and the Chinese authorities have now opened the economy in a very significant way. And what was very interesting, Mark, is when I was in London last week and we went out to dinner a couple of nights, was the huge number of Chinese tourists in London at the moment. So I see that as being a very positive sign that the Chinese market will open up and they'll start to buy diamonds, which will be good for the diamond industry. And so that's the key issue to follow there.
And this is important, isn't it? Because the pricing of diamonds is really driven by the consumer in this case. It's not like other commodities or mining projects where industry might demand the commodity. It's really consumer driven here. Is that right?
No, absolutely. And the Chinese market is very, very significant after the American market. And those markets around engagement and weddings and things like that. And now the Chinese are more free to spend their money with travel and buy goods as such. They will start to buy diamonds as well.
Excellent. Okay, good.
Moving on, imminent production. This is our slide on imminent production. You'll see diamonds which we recovered from the Thorney River project a couple of years ago. And the slide at the bottom, preparing the roads at Marsfontein, was literally taken 3 days before I arrived in London last week. So all the roadworks have been done, the plant site has been prepared, and stripping has already taken place. So mining has essentially started and will look to commence processing during the course of this week. And this is on the Marsfontein project. Meanwhile, about 6 kilometers away, as the crow flies, we have the Thorney River project, which is a much larger and longer life project where we applied for mining permits in the course of last year. These were accepted. And as soon as they are granted, which we expect during the course of Q2 2023, we'll move the mining and processing equipment currently at Marsfontein onto Thorney River. The way in which we're mining this, we're using a royalty miner. So there's no capital or operating costs, which is due to Botswana Diamonds. We're using a company called Eurafrican Diamond Corporation. They own and operate the Shula Diamond Mine, which is close to Premier Mine, just northeast of Pretoria. And Botswana Diamonds will earn 15% of the run-of-mine production and 25% of any special stones. And as I mentioned, with no capital and operating cost outlay.
Okay, so this is really a good example of that first slide you showed me about becoming a diamond producer, but also minimizing the risk through the joint ventures, because you're saying here, hopefully you're going to be in production this month, effectively. So there's not long left of this month, and there's how it's going to get out of the ground, and there's your reward.
Exactly, Mark. It's always very good to have these mission statements at the beginning of your presentation. But as you rightly said, this is basically implementing that mission statement, getting into production as quickly as we can, and risk sharing it essentially with a reputable mining company.
And you've been exploring on Marsfontein for quite a while, have you, the company?
The company's been exploring in the Marsfontein Thorney River area, which is essentially what they call the Nkumpi Valley. It's all part of the same kimberlite complex for 6 years. And okay. Every year we've had 1, 2, or perhaps 3 field campaigns to do the exploration. But it's not been something which we've worked at consistently over the time period, because as you know, with juniors, you do campaign work, you raise your money for your drilling, you do your drilling, you announce the results. assuming the results are good, you can raise some more money and you kind of carry on. So we've probably done about 6 months of total field work to get to this point.
Right. Okay, that makes perfect sense. And then the idea is that you, as you get into production on Marsfontein, to deploy the equipment to further explore Thorny River.
Absolutely. We'll start the mining on the mining permits, which we anticipate being approved during the course of Q2 of this year. Excellent. Absolutely. And because it's only 6 kilometers away, rather than, we're sitting at something like 300 kilometers away from where I'm talking at the moment, the kit is all there. The people are all skilled at what they are doing, and the transition will be a lot quicker and simpler than it has been over the past kind of couple of weeks.
Okay. Now, I do remember when we spoke before, we talked about a project that, and I can't remember the name of it, but you said there was payback within days, I think.
Well, Mark, yes, you have a very good memory. That was the Marsfontein kimberlite pipe itself. We are mining the gravels and the dumps associated with that Marsfontein kimberlite, which had an extraordinary payback of 3.5 days, chiefly because of the very, very high-grade colluvial gravels which were sitting on top of the pipe.
Right. Okay. So this is, an old mine, and you're going to process the existing material that's on site.
That's correct. It's very simple mining because it's dumps and gravels, and then it's a simple processing plant. So there's no drilling and blasting or anything complicated like that. So it's a fairly simple earth moving procedure using a front end loader, like you see in the bottom right hand corner of the slide, dump trucks and a fairly standard processing plant operation.
Okay, so I don't like to use the word simple or easy, but more of a simple or easy way to get into cash flow, really.
Exactly. When we move on to Thorny River, we will eventually have to drill and blast there, and we will have to use slightly more complicated technology. But this is a very good kind of first step to becoming a diamond producer.
Indeed, a very good first step. And just a last point on this project before we move on. Do you have any idea of projected cash flows at this point, or does that really depend on when you start getting the operation going and you see what's going through the workings?
I would prefer to say that we've got anticipated grades of the dumps and the gravels, which have been taken from historical literature, and we're very sure of our own production throughput rates of the mining and processing equipment we're taking up. So I would prefer to kind of update the investors on production results after probably a month or 6 weeks of going on the project.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, James. You can move on now. That's explained those two projects very well.
Okay, then the second big leg to Botswana Diamonds is the Kalahari of Botswana, where we're very active exploring. We have our own KX36 project, which I'll touch on at the moment. But there is still the potential transaction on the Gargu diamond mine. And this we see as being fairly catalytical in order to kind of release the value of KX36 and our exploration assets in Botswana. We continue to engage with several interested parties who want to work with us to acquire the Gargu diamond mine from Gem Diamonds. As you see from this slide, it's a large kimberlite pipe of 10.8 hectares. It's got an indicated resource of just over 79 million tons at a nice high diamond value. Now look at the splendid stone sitting on the bottom right-hand side. And the project, from a Botswana diamond perspective, has been substantially de-risked, as Gem Diamonds spent $250 million or thereabouts building a mining operation, which you can see from the aerial view on the top right-hand corner of the slide. And then my final bullet goes back to my first slide in terms of the significant improvements we can bring, particularly in terms of technology, in terms of making this a sustainable commercial operation.
Okay, fantastic. So you're hoping to get this sort of concluded fairly soon, because I know this has been going on for quite a while, hasn't it?
Mark, absolutely. You've got a very good memory. In January of last year, Vast Resources PLC announced they could no longer fund the project, so they couldn't continue with it. So we have been looking and talking to several investors during the course of last year. But very interestingly, towards the back end of last year, several interested parties approached the regulatory authorities and the Chamber of Mines in Botswana about being interested in this. And we're delighted that they passed their names on to us. So we are working with them, plus a few others who've come to realize that this is the largest available diamond project actually in the world. So if you want to get to diamonds, Botswana is a fantastic place to be. They call it the Switzerland of Africa. So this is the project to work on, really. And some of those people who we're now talking to now, I'm how does Alan Greenspan say? Cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic. Okay, well, let's have to wait and see what happens here. I guess no work is going on from Botswana Diamond side at the moment on this project then?
Nothing at all, because it's 100% owned by Gem Diamonds. And I must say they've been very, very good to us by keeping the door open whilst we have taken some time, as you said, to try and find an interested investor.
Okay, but this is potential blue sky here we're talking about, very good blue sky.
This is what I would call a transformatory transaction, because within it, we can actually encompass several of our Botswana assets if we choose to do so.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, thank you for that.
Well, the second asset in that portfolio would be the KX36.
Mm-hmm.
KX36 is 60 kilometers away from Gargu. This was the acquisition we made from Petra Diamonds 2 years ago. And it essentially is the most significant diamond discovery since the discovery of the Rapa and Dronning clusters by De Beers in the 1960s and 70s. And essentially, for us to really develop this project, it needs Gargu to work because of those synergies in terms of operational and technical aspects. It's a smaller resource, but if you add the resource of Gargu onto KX36, you have over 100 million tons of indicated resource kimberlite. And I think there are very, very few diamond juniors who have that on their portfolio. It has a higher grade, but a lower diamond value. There is a bulk sampling plant there too as well, which we acquired from Petra. And this kind we see as being synergistic with Gargu if we can get Gargu to work.
Right, okay, but it goes hand in hand with it, really, as you say. You need to get the situation and the transaction sorted with Gargu, and then this fits into the bigger picture with Gargu.
Absolutely. It's almost like that it would come on stream later. It provides a pipeline of projects, which often is actually very important. It's all well and good to have one diamond mine, but if you want to produce cash flow and be a growth stock at the same time, then you need to have good projects, commercial projects flowing down the pipeline.
Indeed, yes, that's very important. That's very important. Okay, well, thank you for that.
Moving a bit further down the pipeline, so to speak, as well, in what we call advanced exploration. Advanced exploration is where kimberlites have already been discovered and they are diamondiferous. So the work that we actually need to do on them is all about resource development. If I look at the second major bullet before I touch on the first bullet, because this complements what I've been saying around Gargu and KX36, is Siseko, of which we are a joint venture partner, has achieved regulatory approval to increase its stake on the highly prospective Maibwe joint venture from 29 to 50%. This has also taken a long time to do. I've been working on this for, I think, 5 years, or ever since I've joined Botswana Diamonds. But we're delighted that we actually now have the regulatory approval to proceed. And you'll see in the sub-bullet there's several kimberlites, one of which recovered significant quantities of microdiamonds. This is west of KX36 and Gargu, but it's in the same Kalahari area. And of course, it's further downstream in terms of the pipeline. The other advanced project we have is the Rayvelo kimberlite cluster of kimberlites, which is a cluster of 3 kimberlites northeast of Kimberley, all subcropping on the surface. So quite different from the kimberlites we have in the Kalahari, which are between 60 and 80 meters of Kalahari sand sitting over and above it. And we also did here a deal with Petra, but this time it was a data deal They had done a terrific amount of exploration work. So what we've been able to do with our data deal is fast forward all the way through to taking samples for microdiamond analysis. So we haven't had to take samples for heavy minerals. We haven't had to do geophysics. We haven't had to do our own percussion and core drilling. And we've been able to take samples directly from Petra's core straight for microdiamond analysis. And they're in the queue awaiting microdiamond analysis. So those are our two advanced project areas.
Okay, that's good. So we've got project going into production, project that is on hold, blue sky, transformational, as you say, and then advanced exploration projects. So are there any other projects in Botswana Diamonds?
Yes, finally is blue sky itself.
Okay.
And what we call blue sky is ground in which we are yet to discover kimberlites, but it's highly prospective. Of course, in the central Kalahari, we have found several geophysical and geochemical anomalies. These require drilling, and undoubtedly some of those would be kimberlites. So it's even further down the pipeline. And as I mentioned in my introduction, we believe Zimbabwe to be highly prospective. And as soon as we are able to get our own licenses and start working there, we'll take a look.
Okay, so there's quite a few projects there then, James, in the portfolio, which is good, but also for a junior, it's difficult to obviously give them all the love and attention that they need. If I can ask you, because I think in the middle of this week, probably tomorrow, you said you were going out to the field, so I was quite keen to know where it is you're going to be going and what it is you're going to be working on. But if we take the production at Arsfontein, Thorny River to be starting in January, what objective would you like the company to achieve this year, as well as the production, if we take that as a given?
Absolutely, Mark. Focus is very, very important, but also having sufficiently diversified in terms of numbers of projects. So if I look at the allocation of my time, it will be very clearly 80% plus on Marsfontein and Thorny River and Gagu in the Central Kalahari. Those are my two major focuses. So yes, I'm spending tomorrow and Wednesday on Marsfontein to support the mining contractor commission the mining operation itself. On Thursday, Thursday and Friday, I plan to go to Gagu. And that's the nature of my work. Next week, it'll be back to Thorny River and Marsfontein again to kind of kick that going. So where would we like to be at the end of the year? Because I think that's what you're alluding to. And if where I would like to be is to have a strong commercial operation running at Thorny River. And I would like to have concluded a sensible commercial transaction for Botswana Diamonds on Gagu, probably encompassing our other assets too as well. So you've got the short-term cash flow coming from Thorny River and Marsfontein, but then you have the transformatory acquisition of a much larger production, because here we're looking at about 20,000 carats plus per month coming out of Gagu within 18 months to 2 years of an acquisition.
Okay, and Gagu, is that ready to go? It doesn't need any exploration. It just needs, I guess, refreshing of the plant and the on-site machinery.
It's exactly that, Mark.
Okay.
There's an indicated resource. GEM have already recovered just under 150,000 carats. One would need to kind of patch up the plant a little bit because it's been looked after very well, must say, on care and maintenance by GEM. And then you'd need to reactivate the mining operation underground. So all the hard work has actually been done by GEM Diamonds there.
Okay, so really, if I'm to take away from this chat today, your objective for this year is really to get some projects into production. One is already nearly happening, get that cash flow through rather than spending capital on exploring, particularly given the advanced exploration projects there, Rivilo and Miwabwe. You're actually focusing really on getting the cash in the door, really getting some production inside before you then look to go and spend money on exploration potential.
Absolutely, Mark. We might do just a little bit of work to maintain our licenses. And as I mentioned earlier, that we've probably saved well over $1 million by doing the data deal with Petra on the Rivelo. So all that we really have to do is spend the money to do the microdiamond analysis. And so that's not only just saved us $1 million, but saved us a considerable amount of time and effort too as well.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you, James. Do you have another slide, or are we?
Very, very briefly, this is the kind of the mugshots. I'm not going to go through them, all the kind of ugly mugs on that one. This is a bit of a corporate profile. This is taken directly from our website. For those of your investors who are interested, we're fairly active on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And yes, Mark, that's the brief presentation.
Well, thank you very much, James. That was very good to get an update there in a very succinct manner. Nice to see you have just one slide effectively per project, and you really explained exactly what the company wants to achieve this year. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how things go, given as well that imminent production there at Marsfontein. So I'm sure we'll be catching up on perhaps an interview, much shorter update from you when that's getting in production. We can talk about how it's going.
I'd love to do that, Mark, and possibly even from site, if the communications allow.
That would be ideal, James. Well, thank you very much, James Campbell, the Managing Director of Botswana Diamonds, for your time.
Thank you very much indeed for the interview, Mark. Much appreciated.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stopboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.